We're all aware that segregation used to be the law, but you might be surprised to find out which state had more Jim Crow laws than any other. Are you aware of a set of laws in our past called Jim Crow laws?
Familiar with the term, but not really the laws themselves.
They were basically legalized racism. Which state had the most Jim Crow laws on the books?
Louisiana or Mississippi?
I would probably guess Mississippi.
The gut answer is Mississippi, but you're going to tell me I'm wrong.
I am.
Mississippi?
California. Some might think that California has always been open-minded, progressive, and free-thinking. However, history suggests otherwise. After the Civil War ended in 1865, American Reconstruction offered former slaves newfound freedoms, such as the right to vote and to hold public office. But this progressive era proved short-lived. From the 1880s to the 1960s, it became common for states to legally enforce segregation. And in California, the sheer number of these laws was shocking. This kind of prejudice, right out there in the open, is particularly nauseating. To be black and to be able to articulate what is being done to your character, to your culture, and to every single person who looks like you, to know that millions of Americans at one time, this was their perception of you. One of the saddest parts about all this is there's so much of this stuff. And the thing that you need to note is that this is not a long time ago. This is an eye blink ago in America. David, tell me about the origins of Jim Crow.
Most people believe that Thomas Rice, a white actor, blackened his face and pretended to be a black person on stage, acted like a buffoon and a fool to mostly white audiences, created this stage persona, Jim Crow, and eventually that term, Jim Crow, became a synonym for segregation laws and segregation customs.
When we say Jim Crow laws, what were they?
Well, when I think of Jim Crow, I think mostly of a racial caste system where laws played an important role, but not the only role. So a place like California, for example, you'd find a statute prohibiting blacks and whites from marrying. And in certain places, you would find statutes that mandated segregation in the school systems. But it was more than that. It was also the etiquette that existed during that period. So, for example, if you were a white American, I could not show pity toward you because that would imply in some way that I was superior to you. I mean, there were just literally hundreds and thousands of everyday rules designed, quite frankly, to make sure that whites were in the superior position.
California had more laws on the books concerning segregation than any other state. Why?
It's a little surprising when you discover the sheer large number of Jim Crow laws or Jim Crow-like laws. You had the same sorts of racist ideas in California that you had in some other states, but you also had a very diverse population. They had more opportunities to discriminate. There were not just African Americans, there were Japanese Americans, Chinese Americans, Filipino Americans, Mexican Americans. So whereas in Alabama, you may have been directing your Jim Crow and Jim Crow-like statutes and codes against African Americans and Native Americans, in California, you had those groups, but you also had groups representing many Asian nations or Mexico, for example.
The Jim Crow laws stayed with us until at least 1964-65, but we are still living in the echo of all of it to this day.
The word you used is very profound. You know, what we really have is an echo.
Yeah.
And that's an echo despite much progress.
Seeing such blatant, out in the open racism is hard to look at, but it's a chapter in America we can't ignore, because history allows us to see the mistakes in our past so we can better shape our future. There's one more thing you don't know about civil rights, and as far as I'm concerned, it's something you need to know.